One of the things I really like is your campaign platform. I love what you have here. First and foremost, create true democracy. Immediately, you express clean out government corruption. I think that is a big one. Ban corporate lobbying, revitalizing our economy. You talk about living wage and housing, of course, Medicare for all, ending the wars. That's a really big one for, at least for me and for a lot of other people that watch the show as well. Expand civil liberties, which mentions ending surveillance, the drug war, mass incarceration, also regulating AI and breaking up big tech. That's a big one. And protecting the environment. One of the ones that really stood out to me, and I would like for you to explain to people who may not be aware, disband NATO. So I 100% agree with that. Could you explain to people who may not fully understand, because I've been to anti-war rallies before where we've had signs say disband NATO and people will walk by and say, are you crazy? Can you explain to people why you think it's important that we disband NATO?
Well, I think we can see that very clearly in the situation in Ukraine right now. You got precious Ukrainian brothers and sisters who are suffering in ways we don't have a language for. We're always in solidarity with anybody who suffers. And you say, how did we find ourselves in a situation where the American empire promised Gorbachev, as the Soviet empire was dissolving, that NATO would not move 1 inch. And there was a consensus among Russian elites, right-wing, center, and progressive. If NATO moved 1 inch, like any empire, they would not only feel provoked, but they would feel as if the backs were being pushed against the walls. Fast forward to a few years later, 14 ex-Soviet countries are part of NATO, right on the border with missiles pointed toward Russia. Now, Putin's a gangster. I think we know that. No doubt about that. But if the United States had missiles in Mexico or Canada or Cuba or Venezuela, the U.S. government would have blown them to smithereens the first day. That's how empires proceed. An empire is an empire. It's predatory. It's greedy. It's obsessed with its own territory and its geopolitical interests and so forth. So the United States knew that they were pushing Russia against the wall. And then you end up with a war with our precious Ukrainian brothers and sisters with an invasion. Now, the invasion is a crime against humanity. There's no doubt about that. But when you pushed, and this is not a rationalization of Putin at all, it is his imperial response to the U.S. imperial use of NATO as an instrument of U.S. global power. And that's just a matter of truth. You could be actually conservative, centrist. We saw the piece in Harper's Magazine with Brother Benjamin Schwartz and the others telling the same story. They're not leftists. They're trying to be honest about Stephen Cohen, one of the great Russian historians, taught at Princeton and NYU for many years. He said the same thing. You know, Sister Katrina, his wife, who is the publisher of Nation Magazine, they said the same thing. Well, they were viewed as what? Oh, they must be Russian spies, Russian informers. You don't want to hear the truth. And so when I talk about NATO, what I'm saying is there's other ways of ensuring the safety of European nations other than having institutions that are the instruments of U.S. global power. And the Europeans are the ones who have to pay the price. And we headed toward what? Possible nuclear war.
Yep.
Hey, that's serious business. Possible blowing up of nuclear energy centers. That's serious business. Serious business. You see what I mean? And so, it's just a matter of, I said from the very beginning, that it's not just a campaign. I think every human being with integrity, honesty, and decency wants to be a force for good in the language of John Coltrane, and therefore wants to be a quester for truth and a quester for justice. I don't even think it's a matter of just ideology. I really don't. I really don't. it would be like apartheid in South Africa. You ain't got to be no leftist to be in solidarity with black folk getting degraded and subjugated and exploited like that. If you're a decent human being with any morality and spiritual sensibility, you're going to be upset. You're going to have a fire inside you to want to fight against it. Same is true with the Palestinian brothers and sisters. And everybody knows, oh my God, if there's a Palestinian occupation of Jewish brothers and sisters, boycott, the divestment, sanctions would be on the cutting edge, and those who supported it would be receiving moral prizes. And I simply say to them that my solidarity with my Jewish brothers and sisters under a Palestinian occupation, I have the same morality and spirituality in regard to Palestinians under a vicious Israeli occupation. Because occupation, exploitation is wrong. If you had black folks occupying and subjugating white brothers and sisters, it's wrong. I'm in solidarity with the white brothers. So the white brothers and sisters occupying and exploit black folk, I'm with the black folk. Now, granted, I got a little bias toward black folk because my mom is black and my dad is black and so forth. But all human beings have the potential to be gangsters and thugs. And that's one of the things that a lot of our Jewish brothers and sisters have to recognize. You see, they've been underdogs for so long. We understand it. 2,000 years of hatred, chronic hatred and pogroms and Holocaust, beyond language in terms of the evil. But you can have an underdog mentality, but be a top dog vis-a-vis Palestinians, and therefore think you have the right to treat them anyway to preserve your way of life. No, that's wrong. And somebody's got to say it. Not one member of the Democratic Party can come forward and say it in a serious way other than our sister from Detroit, Rashida, and a few others, but not too many. And you say, well, how are you going to have a party with no commitment to the truth on these issues? The condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. If you don't allow that suffering to speak, you live in a lie or a half lie. And the same is true with justice. The same is true with justice. Justice, what love looks like in public and deep democracy is what justice looks like in praxis. It's like tenderness is what love feels like in private.
Well said. Well said, Dr. West.